Welcome to another Motortown video. Today I'm here to take a closer look at the current state of the game. I want to talk about the different job types in this game and where I think they are currently at, in terms of how complete they feel, how well developed they are. So this is going to be a very subjective list, and yeah, I just want to go through the different job categories as a whole. I'm basically painting broad strokes here. When it comes to the overall state of the game, I could also, of course, include things like the current tuning options, the property system, what could be added to that, and that kind of stuff. But that would be going very, very far out there, and I would like to keep this a bit more focused. So the things that I'll be looking at is the different jobs that can make you money potentially, and also go through it in terms of the different level types. So over here we have 7 different levels. Driver level doesn't really count here because that's something that you can get from anything. So I'll be looking at stuff in terms of taxi, bus driving, cargo transportation, racing, tow trucking, and police work. And I'll start with the one that I think is the most developed and then go further down the line just from there. Starting with the thing that I think is the most praiseworthy, but then also giving a few pointers to the stuff that I think should be improving. And of course, when we talk about the most developed of these different job types, what else could it be but cargo transportation? I mean, in terms of content, this must be about half of the game if we look at it through a certain lens. Not only do we have a lot of different types of cargo, anything that can go on a flatbed or into a box truck, we have liquids, we have dump cargo, we have logs, we have trash, cement, concrete, and live fish. I'm likely missing out on one or two, but yeah, these are the most broader categories. And it goes from anything as small as a bike or even just a scooter with a little cargo box for a pizza delivery, over different pickup trucks that can maybe take a pallet or two, to the larger types of trucks, eventually the huge dump trucks like the Atlas over here, and into a full array of semi trucks with their own set of trailers to come along with. And I mean, yeah, in terms of sheer content and depth here with AI tracking system, supply chains, that kind of thing, this is huge. And even if we look at certain categories, it usually keeps up just by looking at the logs. There are, well, we have this little rigid truck over here. We have 2 different log trailers of different sizes. Dump cargo is kind of the same. Liquids, same story there with a lot of different options. Maybe a few ones could still be added to make this even better, but for the most part, this is pretty great. One thing that on its own would definitely not be this far up on the list is, however, the trash. I'm bringing this up specifically because I actually like trash transportation, but this thing really, it needs some love. This is one of the few that only has one delivery vehicle for the type of cargo, and it's also completely busted in terms of payout. To be clear, for this list, my goal would be that everything pays fairly. Compared to the amount of money that you put in, compared to the amount of effort it takes, the distance you travel, or that kind of thing. There will never be a single answer for everything, but there's definitely a few ones that are outliers in terms of how imbalanced they are. Basically, trash bags spawn all over the place, and doesn't matter where you pick them up, they are always worth the same, meaning that ideally you really want to do this job in the western half of Lijo Island because that's the closest to the next drop-off point over here. OG might help get you a bit of town bonus going, but anything here is already much further away from the landfill. So yeah, it doesn't really make much sense even going into Gwengjin at all or down to Sanho for picking up the trash there. There really needs to be some distance-based pay bonus as well, but right now that sadly isn't the case. And I would argue for the shorter deliveries, the amount of money you make, it's a bit too much even. But yeah, overall, just getting a few more trash ties would be nice, getting the payments adjusted, and maybe either updating this truck or completely replacing it, because everything that we've gotten recently, it just looks so much better by comparison. Yeah, this could all be improvements to this job, and therefore, due to all the stuff that I just mentioned, if it was to stand on its own, it would be somewhat low on the list, likely somewhere between the top 3 and the bottom 3 right now. But still, nice job, fun one to do, and also pretty unique in how it works out. But yeah, as a whole, when we look at the grand category of cargo transportation in this game, I mean, once more, what else could be topping this one? So yeah, let's take a look at the second place. And to be clear, second and third were almost a coin flip. They are pretty close, but very far away from the number 1 here. So let's go over to the bus dealership. And let's go from here and talk a bit about bus driving. Because in my honest opinion, this is the second most developed job in the game right now. We have a pretty decent roster of vehicles going from almost makeshift buses that we need to buy a bus license for, over to something slightly larger, which realistically also should be an electric vehicle, but hey, maybe we'll get the option at least at some point, to the good old American style school bus, a generic looking type of city bus. And I'm calling this generic looking because it kind of is, but they all, or most of them kind of look the same, so it's fitting. To a coach, Greyhound buses, and yeah, on its own, this wouldn't really be all that amazing. I think especially the default bus lines need some work, but the fact that we can make our own ones is just really putting this far and beyond anything else here, because that's just adding so much depth. Just going into the menu, and I should really show you guys the menu. Being able to start your own bus route, look at where everybody is, even just going over there personally and asking where anybody wants to go, to know what the best possible connection could be. And yeah, just with all the bus stops all over the place, more of which will be added the more things we get around here. The more cities we get, the more other points of interest we get. We don't have anyone at the steel mill right now, but I think that's also more of a question of when, not if. This is just adding a whole nother level, and the same is true when we look at AI company buses, which of course for large servers is not really a good option due to performance, but especially in single player. Just going back and forth between different versions of the same line, trying to optimize how much you can do with how many buses, how many slots you want to have left over for maybe company trucks to do your part of a supply chain for you. It's very in-depth. It's a whole nother layer to the game, and I'm so happy that we have it. So yeah, this all comes together to be quite amazing, and I'm really happy with what we have right now in terms of buses. There are a few things though that I think this entire thing should be doing better. First up, when we go to a bus stop that is on our line, I don't think there's anyone close by here. But yeah, at any bus stop we should have the option to just drive past it and get the next location right away. If my bus is full and nobody wants to get off at the stop, then there's no real reason to stop, open the door, and yeah, just give anybody at the bus stop standing there in the rain the option to have a quick look inside. And also, if the bus stop doesn't have any people to begin with, why stop there? If we, of course, miss letting somebody off or miss getting somebody on, that should be our fault, and potentially the guy that wanted to get off there might leave the bus at the next stop and then not pay us for it, because we kind of screwed up what we were meant to do for them. And of course, if we don't let anybody on, that's less money that we can make from the whole journey. That's a big thing in my book that they should be adding. There's another thing that I would really like to see. It's a bit difficult to explain, but I would like to have the option for custom routes to designate stops as the final stop for that section of the route. What that would do then, for example, if we have a route going to Guangjin over here and connecting to Gappa, if I make both Guangjin and Gappa as final stops for the route, any guy that I pick up on the way would only be able to see the stops up until that point. The thing that happened to me is I usually start my route in Gappa, or in Guangjin right here, go over to Gappa, let everybody out, and then on the way back there are a few more stops over here, another stop right here, and a lot of the people who will enter actually want to go back to Gappa, but I'm of course now on my way back to Guangjin. So they will get on the bus, they will not pay that much because they ultimately only want to go from maybe here to here, which is far less to pay for than if you want to go from this secluded village down to one of the more populated terminals. But yeah, those people are now in my bus and they won't get off at Guangjin. And anybody at Guangjin cannot get into the bus now because there's already people sitting there. So if I designate Guangjin as a final stop and people don't have anything else to go or where they want to go to up until that point, they should not enter my bus. And therefore, once I get back to Guangjin, maybe I let a few people out here if anybody wanted to go here. Otherwise, at least the bus should be empty for the people who I actually want to transport. There's a few other examples for that, like with multi-loops that loop back to the terminal, letting people off at the terminal instead of them just staying on the bus for a few other loops until they finally reach their destination. Just these kind of things would be nice to deal with and have things a bit more in depth. Another thing that would be nice to add would maybe be something like contract work. I know that would also be quite a bit of work, but just the option to accept a contract instead of going on a bus route and then basically picking up a huge amount of passengers, maybe at the airport, and bringing them over to, I don't know, to another place, some industry or something, or taking a class into a school bus and bringing them over on a field trip or something like that. That would be nice, but I could also see that just being a lot of work to put in, and especially it potentially getting repetitive after a while if the dev has to set every single destination in order to make that work. But yeah, stuff like that would be cool. Besides that, in terms of vehicles, I think overall we are looking pretty good right here. I would still like to have maybe one bus that's all-wheel drive and already a bit off-road tuned. If you want to go to Guangjin, which is of course a huge moneymaker, any one of these two can do it, but they will need an off-road tune in order to be efficient and not get stuck. But yeah, just having something that comes with all-wheel drive by default would be nice. And maybe also something on the smaller end with free comfort level. I think that would be a nice addition for some of the niche routes. But yeah, as it is right now even, I think we are looking pretty good here. So let's move on to the next one. And once again, this is kind of a toss-up between bus driving and tow trucking. After all, these vehicles, as far as the complexity in their functionality, nothing else is topping that. The cranes, the winches, underlifts, the rollback, this is all very detailed, and I love that the game doesn't shortcut or cut anything short here, but actually makes you use the stuff in the intended way in order to load something on. This is something that the game has really got going for it, and I remember tow trucking in GTA, where you basically just drive up to it, press a button, and then the whole thing is hooked. Or if you have a vehicle transporter like this one, whatever vehicle you transport is already on there from the start of the mission. This one is going the extra mile though, so really happy what Motortown is doing here, and yeah, for this it almost got into a second place, but I think the stuff that's kind of missing here is a bit more severe than for the buses, so for me this is only third place. First up in terms of vehicles, I would really like an off-road ready heavy duty wrecker. Brutus, at the end of the day, while it can do most of the jobs, it's only medium duty, and it's kind of been struggling with the new jobs that have been added since the addition of the rotator. Also, it really cannot handle the rotator well. You can potentially do it, but it's going to be painful, so something heavier is needed. And while the rotator can fill that role pretty nicely when it comes to just going for roadside recoveries. After all, everything here has either got an underlift or a tow bar or something. This truck is not good off-road, as you would expect. And I think we need something that's a bit better off-road than this one, and also on the heavier end than the Brutus, in order to be more comfortable with some of the heavier off-road recoveries. So I think, yeah, there's another vehicle to be added over here. Also for the rotator, I hope we'll eventually get a job that really requires us to use the crane. For some recoveries, it's already a huge help, and that's nice, but overall, for the most part, it's going to be used as just a wrecker with, of course, fully functional underlift over here. So while that's pretty nice in its own right, I would really like to have a job that requires me to get the crane out and also has the payment to make it worthwhile. That's another thing right now, because the payment for these jobs, it's a bit hit and miss. What I would like to get added here is, first up, some modifier that takes into account distance from a tow request to the next road, because that's usually a much harder job to do, getting the vehicle from its current position, which in this case might even be inside a river, to the side of the road than it is to travel on the road for a few kilometers to bring it home. Also, if it's toppled over, just upside down, it likely already has a lot of damage, so you can kiss your condition bonus goodbye for these deliveries, making them usually not even worthwhile to begin with. And all of that needs to be properly addressed, including even just the road distance needs to be taken into account, because right now it feels like it's taking the direct line as the crow flies to the next garage and paying you for that. So for some of these jobs that's really unfair, because you are doing so much of a detour in order to get over here, and it's not really giving you the money for that. So that's in terms of the wrecker job. However, these vehicles here, they are a bit different. You can theoretically use the Kira rollback for wrecker recoveries. After all, it has a winch, so that's pretty nice. but the trailers really require you to get the vehicle onto them under its own power. People have suggested a winch for the Lomax, and I would also like to see it at some point, but at the end of the day, this trailer isn't even really meant for that kind of job to begin with. It's really meant for heavier vehicles, which usually have a bit more ground clearance, but yeah, for regular cars we would really need a different trailer, and I hope we get that at some point, including a winch hopefully. Potentially even a second trailer as a double-decker. I would really like to see this being expanded quite significantly. Also, it wouldn't hurt if the Lomax actually got its own set of jobs as well to reliably have something to do for it. After all, it's a very expensive trailer, and the benefit you get from that is mostly about the ramp that you can add and this little side extension here. Also, they recently changed the ramp in the back here to be a foldable one, so while that helps getting cars on with a bit less damage, often it still isn't enough. So I think there's definitely some space in terms of gameplay for another set of trailers for a different part of the job. The Kira rollback. The biggest drawback about this, or the biggest flaw of it, is that it doesn't come with an underlift, and people have been suggesting this for quite a while. It's on the Trello. I hope it gets added at some point, because for all the work you put in to get one of the vehicles onto the back here, I think it would be nice to have the option to pull another one. Also, potentially another larger rollback would be nice to have. But this one, as it is, also pretty good on its own. And yeah, I think that's all that I have to say about the trucking job right now. So yeah, overall I would say still pretty good, especially when you do deliveries from down here at ARA. There are a lot of good ones that are also highly paying and worth the stuff, and just by having the functional winches and all of that, having the crane, there are so many shenanigans you can do, it's amazing. So yeah, for its complexity, for how functional the vehicles are and all the cool stuff you can do with them, trucking is, tow trucking I mean, is at least place number 2. For some people it might even rank higher. For some it might rank lower, depending on what you like. But I really enjoy this stuff, and I'm so glad this is in the game as it is right now. That brings us to the end of the top 3. And I gotta say, while for me bus driving and tow trucking was pretty close to each other, I think there's overall a pretty huge divide between the top 3 jobs and the bottom 3. So let's get into that by starting with number 4. And number 4 for me has to be taxi driving. This might be the last of the fully viable jobs overall. It already pays a bit worse than a few others, but in the end you can make decent amount of money if you know what you're doing. And yeah, taxi, while having some depth to it, I think is where it really starts to suffer from not having enough development time put into. First up, the good thing, I love that in addition to the few taxis that are in the game by default, you can also put a taxi license, so the little sign up there, onto any regular car in this game and transform it into a taxi. So basically any regular car that you can buy, if you want to use that as a taxi, you can do so, and it just gives you a lot of options, which is really cool. Taxi itself has a few different passenger types, comfort and urgent. Also the option to mix the two or not have any of that. So it would just be a delivery where you can drive however you want. Which is nice, and also it's a bit of depth, especially when it comes to picking vehicles that you can tune up to be really fast, or some things that are a bit more comfortable by default and therefore make a higher comfort bonus. Then again, for comfort, it's a bit of a shame that there aren't really that many options. We have the limo with 7 stars. We have the Servos with 5 stars. The Elisa, which also comes as a taxi by default, so this vehicle with 4 stars, and everything else is either 1, 2, or 3. So, yeah, I would like to have a bit more choice in the upper echelon, a few more options for the limo as well. But as it is right now, that's really not the case, and if you want to go for comfort, well, for regular taxi, it's most likely going to be this one. Maybe the Elisa if you want to, if you're willing to sacrifice part of your income for a bit more drivability. Or really, if you want to just make money, go for the limo. But yeah, that's one way you can slice and dice the taxi job. The other one is through its different iterations. There is regular taxi, which you can use most of the cars for. There's limo work, which I think there are 2 vehicles you can turn into a limo, and the other one has low comfort, so you don't even use that one ever. And there's also ambulance. In terms of how it functions, they are all the same. There's nothing really different between limo and regular taxi driving apart from the payout and also the vehicle restrictions. And I really wish the time was invested to make these feel a bit more unique. There have been plenty of suggestions to the end, but it just didn't happen yet, and that's a bit sad in my opinion. One good thing though is that it hasn't been completely forgotten. Somewhat recently we got the extended search and just job list function over here. So that's a nice touch, allowing us to also filter through what we really want to have here. So this is pretty neat. But again, a lot more work in my opinion needs to be done here. Adding more regular vehicles would already help out quite a bit, because that could easily add a few more viable options. For example, on my other character I switched over from using the Enfo GT as my go-to speed taxi to the Neo. So instead of a focus on driving the Lancia Delta. But in the end I think there's a lot more things that could be done here. Including maybe having some new type of passenger, like a speed freak, so that you would actually have to do some drifting or keep the speed up, drive recklessly, that kind of thing. Potentially also for limo stuff could be a bit more like a round trip with a few people, or ambulance could require you to be fast on the way there and then fast and keeping up the comfort on the way back to not harm your passenger. That would easily at least somewhat change up the job a little bit. But yeah, I think ultimately a few more things need to be done in addition to that. Okay, going to the next one, and this is going to be a toss-up depending on how you play the game. If you only play single player, I think the next job for you would be the police. Because this one can make you some money, there's some progression to be had, and it all kind of works despite being pretty basic and definitely needing a lot of love in order to be more worthwhile and adding more interesting activities to the job. But since I play both in single player and multiplayer on servers with other people, especially when it comes to racing, for me, the next job has to be racing. To be clear, this is a really bad activity in order to make any money with. You have a few options. You can go onto a server, drive against other people. That will make you a pitiful amount, but it's something, I guess. In single player, you can do some hot laps around the different tracks, which will not really do much, but you can get a good idea on um, how well your car is tuned and that kind of thing. But you can also go into into the race mode from the main menu, which will give you the option to uh, drive around a little town circuit and just do that for fun against some AI. It's really not all that amazing. Oh yeah, there are of course also the time trials, which are worldwide, so anybody on the server can participate as well. So these are obviously people that are not in my session. But yeah, I could compete against them on this ring with this car and this engine. Doesn't always work out to something sensible, and especially if you are not filthy rich in this game, you might not have the funds to just jump in, prepare the car and everything. Even if you have, it's a bit of a hassle. But yeah, the reason why for me this is not at the bottom of the list is the recently added Event Maker. Because while it is obviously multiplayer only, if you really want to do something functional with it, just the option to place down checkpoints where you want and invite other people, or more like tell them in chat to join the event, and then have a race, have vehicle restrictions, have engine restrictions and all of that. This is great. And to be clear, if you've seen any of the events that I participated in, you know that this is far from perfect, but just being able to have this in game already far beyond what is possible with police right now. But you have shortcomings with the entire event system. First up, if you really want to turn this into a viable career path solo, the game would need far better AI, and I think it would always be limited to what race tracks you have on the map, which really aren't all that many in the grand scheme of things, understandably. I mean, for an open world game, these are a lot of racetracks. A lot of them just have none. Or if there are some racetracks, like in GTA very often, they are somewhat indoors, so you can only load into them, but you cannot just come off from your job, jump into a car, and just drive onto the track. That's something that I don't really see in other games, or at least not the ones that I played. I guess Forza Horizon likely has something like it. But yeah, just having these in-game, that's already nice, but I think there should maybe be a few more around OG. After all, we have a lot of space here, might as well use it for something. And a few more racetracks here would definitely be appreciated, because even though Anson Speedway has a lot of interesting corners, this thing is completely flat. The few tracks that have a few height differences are actually off-road tracks, and some of them are not all that amazing. AWOL Raceway continuously just kills players with its jumps and all of that. So gotta be careful about that stuff. But yeah, I think overall this has potential, especially if we were to get the option to host these event things right here in a different kind of session. So what I would really like to have is the option to go into the race mode, select the regular world here, but with the option to turn off traffic, police, set a specific amount of time, or I mean a specific time of day, potentially also freeze that so that you don't end up with some unwanted night races if you want it to be daytime. And also in that mode, stuff like the different factories, different other jobs, any roadside tow requests that might be blocking the road should be gone. It should be an otherwise pretty empty world. I think that would take everything here to the next level and make racing so much better in the game. Again, if you are a single player and all of that, it's likely not going to work out. I would like for there to be a viable career path, including just single player racing against AI, potentially also on the open road. When it comes to all the tracks here, I don't think that's enough to really make that work, even if we had proper racing AI. But I think for what the game is right now, it's still gonna be good without that. Would be better with it. But I'm not sure if you could possibly really justify the amount of time it would take to get the game to that point. So yeah, solo racing enthusiasts, sorry, but as much as I would like that to be something for the game, I don't think that's within reason. Anyways, enough about the racing. Let's talk about the last thing. And that is police. Once again, for solo players, you can do much more with police than with racing, so absolutely would put it above that in that case. But still, police in a sense, it's having a few problems, especially since this is technically the only multiplayer PvP job, really. I mean, you could theoretically start stealing each other's cargo, but yeah, this is in multiplayer. It's going to be a PvP focus because most likely you're going to be chasing after other people and giving them fines. But as it is right now, even it's just kind of lacking activities, partially due to the game being family friendly, and therefore you cannot have big crimes or anything like that. No bank robberies, no drug cartels or anything. Therefore, there aren't any jobs that would be busting a drug deal or anything like that, or chasing the bank robbers. It's all very limited with what the game can reasonably be within that scope. But as it is right now, the only two activities are chasing other people or speeding AI drivers, which occasionally happen, or just going for patrol. There's nothing really happening during patrol. You're just basically looking for the closest checkpoint, going there, and then going to the next one. It's kinda chill, but it's not really much of anything. Also, the police cars are completely untuned, meaning that they don't really drive well, and people have made all kinds of suggestions to fix this, from being able to own these police cars and upgrade them, to even be able to apply police licenses to whatever vehicle you want to. Maybe just for regular cars, maybe even pickups, but maybe not semi-trucks or anything like that. Personally, I think it would be nice to have the option to own vehicles that the game has put into the police role. So not being able to make any car a police car, I think that goes a bit too far. Especially if you then come around and upgrade them to look like race cars, like with the Vista or something. But the cars that are already in the game as police car, I would like to be able to own them. Potentially apply a few upgrades within reason, so maybe no V12, no super wide body options if available otherwise. But within reason, change the suspension, add a turbocharger, maybe a slightly stronger engine, just so that the stuff can keep up with other drivers, because in multiplayer, with these ones you are kind of out of luck once you come across someone halfway decent at driving with a somewhat set up car. But yeah, you also don't want this to be overpowered, because otherwise, everybody in the early game is kind of at your mercy. And I really wish, especially for multiplayer balancing, since basically anybody who's speeding will be on the radar of the police, and inherently that kind of means that your job is to interrupt whatever they are doing. There should be a whitelist for police. So if a server owner doesn't want it to be open for everybody, then they should be able to just limit it to a certain role or something and apply that role to whatever player they see fit, and Maybe also revoke it if that's no longer the case. But yeah, so much about all of this. Again, in terms of what could be added to the job as activities, that's really kind of tough. I would like there to be a few more fun things to do, maybe prisoner transport, maybe escorting somebody around or something like that, or just being able to still be police officer while out of your vehicle and maybe find a missing person, chase down somebody who tries to hide from the police. That kind of thing would be nice. Maybe also being able to bust somebody and take them to prison, but in the end, yeah, what we have right now is really, really basic. The dev has been looking for quite a while for feedback on that though. There have been a lot of posts made, but nothing really changed about it yet, so I hope at some point there's going to be something done about this. But as it is right now, well, I'm making this video to talk not only about the things that could be, but also the things that are. And right now there aren't really many things going on here. So for me, ultimately, this is right now the worst developed job in the game. That also means that there's only potential for it to get better. And yeah, I hope it does so at some point. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me for this video. I hope you enjoyed or found this somewhat entertaining, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the different jobs and what you think should be changed, where you think they are at right now. I know especially when it comes to police, it's kind of controversial what even should be done with them to begin with. There are even some people who want this to be the most boring and useless job in the game, if it even has to exist at all. But yeah, that's not necessarily my opinion. So yeah, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, and until next time, have a good one, and bye bye.